Today I've got a very special guest joining me. He's 26-1 in his record, 14 KOs, number 1 ranked in the WBA, number 8 in the IBF, number 10 in the WBO. And in just a couple short weeks, on May 4th, he'll be headlining a fight at T-Mobile Arena versus Naoya Inoue, Ramon Cardenas. Ramon, appreciate you taking time to come on today, man.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Absolutely. So I just said that you're about 2 or 3 weeks away from the biggest fight of
Mm.
your life, headlining a massive mega fight. What's the emotions like right now?
Oh, right now I'm just kind of still going through the motion in a sense of, just training, continuing hard training, and just understanding that the task is not done yet, and
Mhm.
that I have to finish half of the job, which is to train and make weight, and then the other half is to fight.
Absolutely, man. Well, I'm going to dive into this fight a lot more in the very end of this, but I know a lot of people are going to be tuning because this is an international fight. We got one of the biggest fighters in all the world. Everyone around the world is going
Yeah,
to be tuning this fight. And I know some people know your story, some don't. And so I want
yeah.
people to get to know you a little bit better. And so let's head all the way back. You're growing up out there, San Antonio is where you're from. What
Mhm.
was that like growing up out there in San Antonio, Texas?
I mean, it was good. Like anything else, I grew up with a single father,
Hmm.
with two other siblings. So it was one of those things where we had um trials and tribulations in a sense of growing up. Sometimes not everything was easy,
Sure.
but we made it work the best we could. My father made it work the best he could. And growing up in San Antonio it's a nice place.
Hmm.
As long as you stay out of trouble and you stick to something productive in a sense,
Sure.
you'll be okay.
Was this always something in terms of boxing that you pursued? Did you grow up playing other sports? Did boxing just something you fell in love with at a later age? Or when did this all kind of come into fruition for yourself?
So I grew up playing soccer, brother. My
Okay.
dad was a soccer player, so I grew up playing soccer. And originally my plan was to be a professional soccer player. I
All right.
I, I love soccer. I wanted to play soccer. And really, the story of how I got into boxing was mainly just following my brother. My
Mm,
brother went to the gym first, and I ended up kind of just following my brother because for me, my brother is like he's my hero. So
sure, yeah.
you know growing up, I saw my brother as the guy that I wanted to be like.
And so
And
what age did that transition happen then?
it happened around 12.
Okay. And
I
so at
was
that
12.
point then, was this just something that you knew right away, "I'm gonna go all in on this sport," or did that take more time to develop?
It took more time to develop, honestly, simply because when I started, I was playing select soccer.
Okay.
And so, I was getting um I was winning city tournaments and states tournaments and stuff like that. And in boxing, I won my first fight and then I lost like three in a row. And I was like,
Mm,
man, I'm not good at this. Like over here I'm winning and over here in boxing I'm losing. So
mm,
I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm cut out for this. And I just one day I remember I'll never forget I had a conversation with my coach at the time, and I had told him, hey, like I think I'm about quitting because I'm losing. And he told me his story that he started 0-5 and then 5-5 and then 5-10. And then
mm.
he ended up going to like 80 something and 16 or something like that. And I was like,
Alright.
oh man, that's something that I want to do.
Now that had to be something that's a little bit crazy to imagine, like, if you were to tell that 12-year-old self that you're going to be headlining a fight at T-Mobile Arena, Naoya Inoue, undisputed championship fight, I have to imagine that would have blown your mind as a kid. Could you ever imagine, or even I guess ask that question, that if you would have told that younger self of you that this would be in your future, what would your reaction have been?
It's kind of hard to say, man, because I always envision myself. They say like envision yourself in the best possible scenario,
Sure.
and I always envision myself being successful. Always, I always knew like boxing was gonna, I was gonna be successful at this, and I always had that belief in myself. So honestly, if I would have told myself as a kid like you're gonna be midlining in Vegas and all that stuff, I would be like, yeah, like like
All
I
right.
believe it.
Absolutely. And so you kind of talked about your story a little bit growing up, but That obviously was still not easy. I have to imagine there was a lot of trials, tribulations, like you alluded to. How has it helped make you into the person, both inside and outside of the ring? How has it helped kind of grow you into the man that you are today?
Um, all the struggle, and it's mainly like I remember like I used to play soccer in middle school,
Hmm.
and I never forget like I would be done with soccer practice like 5:30, and from right where I live, the gym that I used to go to was like a mile away, a mile and
Okay.
something, like maybe like a mile,
Okay.
or maybe like a mile and something, right? I know it was for sure around there.
Sure.
And I used to have my bag, my gym bag and my backpack, and I used to just run straight to the gym. From
Mm.
soccer practice, run straight to the gym. And I'm talking about I was 12, 13, 14 years old
Wow.
doing this. And it was one of those things where it was like, as a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid doing this, that means you want it. Like that's something there, that there's something installed in you that says, hey, like this is what you want to do.
Hmm.
And so since I was a kid, man, it was just crazy. Like it was just doing all these things and always kind of choosing boxing over everything, always kind of made me understand that this is what I want to do.
You talked about the conversation with your coach, and that was kind of what helped push you in the direction of saying, okay, boxing is what you want to now pursue. Do you remember then, like, what was it about it that inside of you said, you know what, this is true? I'm sure it was a little bit talking to different people, whatnot, but when you made that own personal conviction, said, you know what, boxing is going to be my life. This is what I want to make my career, my profession. I'm going 110% into this. Do you remember when that was, and what was it about boxing that so drew you into it to really make you want to be a part of it?
Well, the first thing really that um really like kind of like said, okay, this is what I want to do is when I won my first national title. In
Okay.
2009, I ended up winning my first national title. That's when I was like, okay, like I'll never forget the kid that I beat. His name was Nathaniel Buchalter
Okay.
from I think New York. And after that, that's when I was like, okay, this is something that I want to do. This is something that I want to do for the rest of my life. And I remember telling my teachers, man, like, my teachers in middle school would tell me, "Hey, you have to go to school and get an education." Because it's like anything, man.
Yeah.
Teachers. I always tell this to people. Teachers are teachers for a reason. Like a lot of them, they want to see kids successful. They want to, help the youth and stuff like that. I've never had a bad teacher, and all
Hmm.
my teachers would always give me, good advice. They would support me. And I used to always tell them like, "Hey, I want to be a boxer. Like my thing is, I want to be a fighter. I want to be a fighter. I don't want to go to school." And they used to always tell me, "No, no, you have to go to school and get an education." And ever since I was a kid, man, when I won my first national title in 2009, that's when I really realized, like, okay, this is what I want to do.
Well, for those that don't know boxing, it doesn't just go to becoming headlining massive events where you get a lot of money right out the gate. This is something where, yes, the peak of boxing, it is very plentiful. You're going to get a lot of great things that come from it, but it takes a long time to work your way up. And I was reading some about your
Mhm.
story, and that's where I really want to dive into now because you get into your career, and there's a quote that I want to read right now from your trainer, Joe Diaz. He said, early in his career, he fought for free. All he wanted was a soda and some tacos after the fight. He started from nothing. He's here. He loves the sport. We're going to shock the world. When you
Mhm.
talk about that first portion there, obviously the big gap from how I'm sure you're going to be getting paid and everything that's coming with this next fight, but you had to be humble in a sense from the beginning portions. It wasn't an easy alternative going into this position in the sport. What were those early portions of your career like?
It was a lot of self belief,
Mm,
knowing that okay, one day I'm gonna get there.
okay.
I didn't know when, man. I had no idea, you know, what year, how old I was gonna be or anything like that. I just knew and I had it deep down in my heart that I was gonna get there. And that's basically what it was, man. Just a lot of self-belief, man, a lot of um just believing in myself and knowing that I'd get here.
You know, that's kind of crazy because a lot of people out there will give up on themselves quite quickly. A lot of people aren't going to believe in that when things are not going that easy, to say, hey, I'm almost pretty much fighting for free right now. But I believe that one day I'm going to be in this position that, well, you're in right now. How
Yeah.
crazy is that for yourself to be able to, like, I guess what kind of instilled that mindset in you? How did you get that mindset to persevere through so many years and grow into the fighter you are today?
I mean, I think it's just something that honestly, man, I feel like you're born with it. You're
Okay.
born with certain things that you can't teach.
Okay.
That's what I was telling my buddy earlier. I was like, when you know the fight's gonna be tough, you were born with that anger or that hey, I know this fight's gonna be tough, but I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just something that was installed in me and that I was born with, really,
Mm.
knowing like just having self-belief.
Now, I don't know if this was your story or not, but at any point in those early years, did things get tough to the point where you started saying, "Hey, maybe this isn't going to work out for myself. Maybe this isn't the right thing. Maybe there's something else out there for me." Or were you always all in saying, "I know what's going to happen"?
I'd say, like when I lost the first
Yeah.
loss that I took, I wasn't necessarily, I didn't think I wasn't supposed to lose, right? Like
Mhm.
really, but God had other plans in a sense, and kind of showed me that, hey, you got to take this sport a little bit more serious. And
Mhm.
so, you know, that kind of, in a sense, was like, man, bro, I've worked this hard to get here, and then I lose to a guy that I'm supposed to beat.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, sheesh, like, that's kind of when I was like, ah. And then the second time was during COVID, was 2020, I believe I was gonna fight. And then I just didn't feel good. Like mentally, I wasn't there. I didn't, really want to fight. I didn't think, I didn't really want at the time to do anything to do with boxing. I
Mhm.
was like, you know what, like I don't want nothing to do with this. And it's funny, man, how crazy or how just really, man, how God has a plan for you, because
Yeah.
I'll never forget was it was fight week. It was the week before fight week.
Okay.
So say for example, next week, and then we have fight week, right? So
Sure. Yeah.
let's just push to next week. I'm sparring, and it was I think it was on Wednesday, and I ended up sparring my friend. And I didn't feel good. I was like, man, I feel bad. I don't feel like I want to do this. And then I'll never forget, I had talked to one of my coaches, and I had told him, I was like, hey, coach, like I don't feel good. Like I don't feel like this training camp has been good. So I don't really want to fight. I was like, let's go run. And I'm gonna pretend I twisted my ankle, and I just said a bunch of BS. And my coach was like, okay, like I got your back. And then this was Wednesday. No, I'm lying. This was a Friday, because
Okay.
the next day we were gonna go run. That Friday, I had called my other coach, like the head coach, and I told him, "Hey, coach, like, um, again, I made up a whole lie. I made up another lie. I was like,
Okay.
hey, like, I got hit in the back of the head. I think I have a concussion and this and that. Again, this is all to get out the fight, because I
Mhm.
didn't feel like fighting. I didn't feel prepared. And sure enough, man, my coach called me back, and he was like, "Oh man, you might have a concussion. Sorry, a concussion." And
Mhm.
then I was like, "Oh man, I might," because every time I look in the light, again, like you can
Yeah.
fake a concussion. As funny as it sounds, you can fake it so easy.
Yeah.
And then so my coach was like, "Oh well, let me call you right back. I gotta talk to the promoters and some that." And then what happened was the he called me back, and he was like, "Hey, turns out you don't have a concussion. You have a COVID. So the fight's off." And I was like, "Ah." I was like, "Yeah." And then I waited a little bit, and then I ended up going home to San Antonio, and I never went back over there. I was training in DC at the time.
Okay.
Never went back, and I told myself, I was like, man, that's already like a second call where like I don't feel good. I was like, you know what? And I was like this close to retiring and everything, and then I was like,
Mm.
if I go back there, I'm gonna retire. And
Really?
sure enough, I never went back.
Now that had to be pretty tough then, because like you said, you were considering retirement at that point. It was almost on the table to some extent. What got
Mhm.
you out of that then? What got you back in and saying, "I love this sport. I'm gonna go all in now again"?
Really, man, and it's a sad situation, but when my coach died, my
Okay.
one of my coaches died. I grew up with him, and for me, it was like, you know what, like he never got to see me accomplish my dreams or like all these things, and for me, it was mainly to finish the mission for him, in a sense of, he might not be here to watch me accomplish these things, but him being, looking down on me and just just guiding me, protecting me in a sense.
Mhm.
It's kind of the motivation that I needed at the time.
And so all this happened, you made this decision, that was around what year then?
2020.
Okay. And so since that point, then obviously you've gone to this place in your position that you're at now. If you were told that same guy back in that point when you were considering retirement that this is going to be the place you're going to be at now, position where you're 26-1, you're ranked number one in the WBA, fighting Inoue in Las Vegas, do you think that would have shocked that person at that point in time?
I think so. That I'll give it to you because I think so. Because like
Okay.
I told you, man, I was considering retirement, and I was like, you know
Okay.
what, like I don't, I'm not really making money. At that time, the most I'd ever made it's crazy. It was only $6,500.
Wow.
It was only $6,500, and half of it I ended up giving it to my dad to help me out. Well, it was 60. No, yeah, it was 6,000.
Okay.
And I gave my manager, well, not my trainer, I gave him 10%, which is 600. And then
Hmm.
I gave half to my dad because he was helping me and stuff like that. So I went home with $2,400, something like
Wow.
that.
And
It
that
was
was
one
the
of those
most you ever
things
made at that point then?
at the most I'd ever made.
All right. Well, there was one point you talked about a few minutes ago, and that was your very first loss in your career. Danny Flores, April 25th, 2017. Now,
Mhm.
there's two parts about that. The first part I just want to ask you, though, is when you look at that fight, then obviously no boxer wants to get that one in the record. That's something that's obviously a little bit of a stigma for some boxers. I'm not as big a picky on that. I think you can lose in boxing as what it is, you'll get back. But that is tough for a lot of guys to get that one in the loss column. Take us through that fight, though. I know you kind of broke it down a little bit. Just take us through that fight and how did that loss impact you at that point in time?
Well, really, man, it was at the time I wasn't really training like I needed to, man. Like I was only training when I had a fight coming up, or like,
Okay.
I was like you could say like a part-time fighter.
Gotcha.
You know, I was 21 at the time. I'm over here thinking I'm like
Yeah.
invincible and stuff like that. So I was eating very bad. I wasn't dieting properly. Like just everything that a 21-year-old kid can think I was doing. I
Gotcha.
wasn't, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do none of that. It's just for me more, like the being undisciplined in the sense
Sure.
of um not training the way I'm supposed to, not running, not doing all the stuff that I know I'm supposed to do.
Mhm.
So I go into the fight, I go in overweight. I didn't know. Actually, I missed weight, but I made weight because I was working out.
Gotcha.
But even that, right? Like I didn't eat for 3 days to try to make the weight. 3 days,
Wow.
bro. And I was traveling. Like I went from DC to San Antonio, and then from San Antonio I went to Monterrey. And it was just a lot of things, man, where like was everything kind of piled up. So then I
Mhm.
finally make weight, and then I after the weigh-ins, I eat a burger. I'll never forget, I eat a burger, and I'm thinking it's gonna, make me go up in weight. I weighed 122, and the next day after the burger, I was at 124. But
Mm.
because the I had
Yeah.
got a little stomach, like a stomach virus. Well, not a stomach virus, but it was more like the food didn't sit well because
Yeah,
I
makes
didn't eat
sense.
for 3 days and I was eating healthy. Then all of a sudden,
A
boom, you
burger.
eat a burger.
Yeah.
So then all the grease and everything, and you know that happened. So then my dad was like, "Hey, we're gonna cancel the fight." I said, "No, no, like I deserve it. I mean, I owe it to all these people. They deserve it. So I'm gonna fight." And sure
Mhm.
enough, man, second round, I hurt my hand. Boom. And I fought 10 rounds like that with a messed up hand.
Mhm.
And I barely lost, even at that one, like by one round, majority decision.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things where, you learn that you have to take the sport serious. And that's what I've learned after that fight.
So you kind of just answered that question then, but I think the biggest thing is as long as you take a loss in boxing and you learn from it, it's going to make you better long term. And I think they kind of made that emphasis there that you did learn from that instance. But when you take us through that the day or two after and you start rewatching the fight, you kind of get a better understanding of what happened then. What flipped in the switch? What just happened mentally for yourself that kind of changed and you learned from that fight now going forward for the remainder of your career?
What really was it was just a wake up call, man.
Yeah,
Because if I could lose to a guy that I'm supposed to beat, like if I lose to them, there's a problem. There's a problem. And that was just my maturity. My maturity of being again, a young kid and that doesn't understand that like boxing is a full-time job.
gotcha.
And it, it's just I was being a part-time fighter in a sense of I wasn't running, I wasn't training when I was supposed to. It was just, oh, you got to fight in 4 weeks. Okay, cool. After
Hmm.
not training for some time and stuff like that.
Now, another thing I saw about when I was researching about you was that in the midst of your boxing career now, you've also were working Lyft, Uber Eats, and those type of things while training. I know that's not
Mhm.
easy because some guys are out there boxing 24/7 all the time, is that their profession, and you're still climbing the ranks. I mean, from that point, we just talk about loss. You've not lost since that point. It's been 8 years. You've been able to be a very good fighter while still balancing these other jobs. How have you done that?
Man, I mean, it's crazy to say, but when I was working Lyft, a lot of it had to do with just, at the time, my girlfriend was a big like it's crazy, man. But at the time, my girlfriend was a big like a support for me
Hmm.
because I was working Lyft in the morning, and then I'd get home and there'd be food there, and I'd go run. Well, I'd go run and there'd be food, and I'd go work, and then I'd come home, I'd chill for a little bit, and then I'd go to the gym, get home, and there'd be food. Then I'd go work, and it was something that I had to do because we had rent to pay.
Yep.
And I never complained about it. I mean, sure, there was days where my girlfriend would tell me, "Hey, you gotta go work," and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm not, hell, no, I'm not trying to do that."
Yeah.
And like that was like my main like driving factor was, hey, we had rent to pay. And
Yeah.
at the time I believe I was like ranked number 4 in the world, bro. I was ranked number 4 in the world having to work live because I
Wow.
didn't have the money to make ends meet. So for me it was like I'm not gonna cry or complain about it. I have a roof over my head. I'm still trying to chase my dreams, and that's basically what it was, man. It's crazy. It's crazy to think back to those days.
Now that has to be motivating to so many people out there because I have to imagine there's been countless other fighters and not even fighters, but just people in this world, regardless of the industry they're pursuing, that have had to go through tough times and eventually they do prevail through those times. So what would your message be to those people in that situation, in their late teens, early 20s, whatever it is, that are going through this type of situations similar to you? What's your word of advice to them?
I mean, my advice to them would be just to keep chasing your dreams, man. I mean, as cliche as that sounds,
Sure.
there's gonna be times and there's gonna be situations that you might not like. You might not like you see me, my biggest thing was, and as funny as this sounds, was picking up someone that recognized me and like
Yeah.
giving them a ride somewhere, and then they're like, damn, this guy over here is ranked number 4 in the world, and he's doing Lyft. He's giving me a ride. And I
Hmm.
and I always was like, man. But then I would think about it and I'm like, hey, bro, like you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
So, my advice for them would be just understand that not everything that's worth it comes easy.
Agree.
You
100%,
know what I
man.
mean?
Well, let's go through now, getting more into present time because you end up continuing to develop now. You go to Pro Box TV, and in this past, 18, 24-ish months, you really start to elevate your name, your branding. Really got yourself in this position, and really would go back to the Pedraza fight, underdog in that situation pretty much, and you have a massive fight then, an incredible performance. We fast forward just a little bit ago, and you have the fight just on February 8th, in which you perform a massive upset once again and really help get you in this position. Can you
Mhm.
walk us through the past 2 years or so, whatever it's been, 18, 24 months of really just continuing to prove people wrong, being the underdog, over doubting them, all the different things? How have the past 2 years been for you?
I mean, I owe a lot to my manager because
Hmm.
when I signed with him, Um, and I told him, I was like, "Man, you changed my life." because
Mhm.
when I signed with him, I had just left the manager at the time that, you know, and I'm not gonna badmouth them. I won't say no names,
Sure.
but at the time, like when I was struggling and going through like rent and not having money and stuff, um, I would message them like, "Hey man, like, can y'all guys help me out with rent? So that way I can focus on the gym and this and that." And they would be like, "Yeah, yeah." Then they would never send me the money.
Mhm.
So I'm like, "Okay, like, cool." And then when I finally my contract expired, they were like, "Hey, we're gonna resign and this and that." And I said, "No, like, I'm gonna just like you guys took care of your own selves, I gotta take care of myself."
Makes sense.
And when I signed with my manager, um, that's when my whole career just like changed because I told my manager from the get-go, I said, "Look, I'm willing to fight anybody. It doesn't matter who it is. I don't mind who it is. Um, as long as for me the money is right." I would tell him like, "As long as the money is right, I'll fight anybody."
Mhm.
And sure enough, I mean, I've been proving that, every fight.
All right, so let's go to the most recent fight. Brian Acosta, 20-0 he is heading into that fight. Obviously, that's going to be a big fight. But I just have to ask you this question then. Beforehand, going into that fight, did you have any idea that you could possibly, the winner would at least have a shot at in a way? Like, was that ever on the table for yourself? Or was that just a fight you said, okay, this is a big deal. Let's take care of business. We'll move on to the next guy?
Yeah, that's what I thought it was gonna be. You know,
Okay.
I always I had it in my head like, oh, maybe I'll fight Inoue next year because he already had everything kind of like mapped out.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
already had I believe it was gonna be Picasso and then it
Yep.
was gonna be MJ and then it was gonna be
Nick Ball,
somebody else.
essentially. Yeah.
Nick Ball, right?
Yep.
Eventually. So I was like, I might fight him, I might not, who knows?
Hmm.
And then sure enough, man, I mean, the call was given to me after like a week after the fight, and I was like, yes, like right away, yes.
Yeah. All right, so let's break down that fight because that was an incredible performance on your part. The Brian Costa fight, obviously, like I said, underdog heading into it. He's an established fighter, great career. Like I said, undefeated heading into that fight. When you go into that fight and you notice, obviously, at that point, you're still trying to build your resume. You didn't know what would be in store for you. But that's a big fight for yourself at that point. Walk us through that fight and just take us through the ups and downs of it. On all at the end of the day, coming out emerging as a victory. What was that fight like?
That fight was good. It showed me that I had a lot of grit. Uh, you know, it showed me that I had a lot of grit. That's the main thing.
Hmm.
Um, there was a lot of like I like it was a crazy, but I went up to 147 pounds. I had never, yeah, I did that one time during COVID. Like
Okay.
when COVID first started and stuff. I started training again, and then it was like 147. I was like, damn. This time I went up to the same weight, but I didn't feel it because I was still training.
Yeah.
Like I was still doing what I had to do, but I didn't feel the weight. And so for me, making weight was like one of those things where it was like, oh, like it was kind of hard on that fight. But the fight itself, it was good. Like I beat him the first 6 rounds easy.
Yeah.
The first 6 rounds I did whatever I wanted, and then I got lazy, and then I got caught with a good shot
Hmm.
right on the temple. I went down, but I was telling my coaches and stuff like, if I didn't go up too much in weight or lose too much weight the night before, that shot wouldn't have hurt me because
Hmm.
the guy didn't really hit hard. He didn't have power where like, oh damn, he's hitting me and it every time it hurts. No, it was never that.
Gotcha.
And but for me it was again the immaturity, not immaturity, but it was more like, you know, me going up too high in weight. Now I learned from that and I said, you know what? Yes, I like Wingstop. I like all these restaurants, pluckers, and I like my thing is I love wings. And I love the crab boil,
Okay.
the seafood boil and all that stuff. I love that. But after this fight, I couldn't eat that. So I was like, okay, like I'm good. And now that I'm eating healthy and now that I'm eating organic meat and all that stuff, like what is it? Grass-fed meat and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that I'm eating all that, it feels better because I don't get bloated and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And basically, back to what you were asking me, that fight was one of those fights where I know I could have. beat him easy, brother. Like I could have been, it could have been a way easier fight than what it needed it to be. But
Okay.
I went up too much in weight.
And so I just got to ask you right there. So you were at 147, you said, obviously you cut down to 122. That's quite the weight cut right there. I know we see some of those crazy numbers out there, but what was that weight cut process like for you then?
I mean, man, it was kind of difficult because I think it was
Mhm.
like 2 weeks before the fight, I had barely hit 135.
Oh, wow.
Like
Okay.
it was heavy, bro. Like it was one of those things where like it was difficult because even the night before, I lost like 6 pounds. I
Okay.
lost
Wow.
6 pounds the night before, and I was like, oh, like it was just very bad.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get into now what you got upcoming because we've talked about it a few different times, and now I really want to dive into, and that's what you got upcoming now for yourself. And
Mhm,
you talked to a little about the phone call, but now let's just go through this whole storyline because you get that fight, you're number one WBA, you're ranked highly. Obviously, there was going to be some form of big fight next. What you
mhm.
obviously, like you said, you had no idea it was going to be this big of a fight, but when that phone call did come, just take us through your reaction. What was that whole process like?
I mean, I was buying food. I was
Okay.
buying food, and then I get a call from a manager, and we were just talking about something else.
Mhm.
And then out of random, he was like, "Hey, would you like to fight anyway?" I said,
Okay.
"Yeah, man. I already had told you that that's the fight I want." He said, "Okay." He's like, "May 4th," and I said, "Wait, you serious?" He's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Yeah, of course." Like, I was like, "Yeah, like for sure." And then he's like, "Okay, well, just keep it on the low because nobody knows, and we're still figuring out numbers and this and that." And
Sure.
I was like, "Okay." So then I went right back to camp. I came straight back to California that Monday. I got the call on a Friday, and I called my friend. I called my trainer and I told him, "Hey, we might fight anyway." And then that's when he was getting a haircut. It was funny. He was getting a haircut, and then that Monday we were back in California.
All right. Well, we got to get into this process now because you're in the midst of training camp. You're a couple weeks out now from getting out to Vegas. What has
Yeah.
this training camp been like so far for yourself?
I mean, it's been tough because I think I mean, this is the epitome of boxing, man.
Yeah.
Everybody to fight for world title is one thing, man, but to fight for undisputed,
Hmm.
it's on a whole nother level. So for me, it's just been, just more focus, more just sticking to the plan, understanding that this is again, this is the epitome of boxing, brother. Like you doesn't get no bigger than this.
Hmm.
So it's just been extra lasered in focus, and just the focus has been a lot more on me recently.
All right. So I want to just dive into your mindset a little bit more because not many people, like you said, get experience this, let alone world championship fight. That's the pinnacle of boxing to a certain extent, but undisputed is the absolute pinnacle of boxing for
Hmm.
yourself. And that's something I'm sure it has to have different emotions going through your mind. I'm sure you've thought in the back of your mind, like, holy cow, in a few weeks, I could be undisputed world champion. I could be all these different things, but I'm sure you have to find a way to balance that. Say, okay, that's great, but I got a job to focus in right now.
Yeah.
How do you balance all these different things at the same time?
I mean, for me, it's just, I'm taking it as just another day in the office in a sense of it's another fight. The
Okay.
guy's going to come and try to knock me out just like I'm going to try to knock him out. And
Yeah.
so that's how I'm taking it. I'm not really looking at the titles yet. I'm
Yeah.
looking at just he's going to try to knock me out and I'm going to try to knock him out. And I'm not trying. The thing is, I'm not trying to let the moment like eat me. I'm
Makes
trying to
sense.
just, it is what it is. It's another fight, and that's how I'm seeing it.
When you look at your body of work, how you're feeling so far, now, like I said, camp's not 100% done yet. You're nearing the conclusion of it, but how good do you feel personally? Is this the best version of yourself that we've seen yet? How good do you feel right now at this point in time?
I feel good, man. I feel really good. I think for me, it's always been. I try to live up to the moment.
Makes
I
sense.
I always. I'm one of those guys, man, and it's funny, but when the moment is like good, like tough.
Hmm.
Like, I'll go up to that moment. Sometimes, I was like, let's say for sparring, for example. Some guys, I'll spar them and like I'll go down to their level.
Mm,
But when it's somebody who's good, then I go up to that level or more. So I
yeah.
think this is gonna be those fights where, I know it's gonna be a tough fight, man, but I'm excited and I'm willing to go up to that level.
I've seen some of the sparring footage and what you've done so far in your camp. One guy you've had in there is a fellow guy that's in one of the top ranked contenders who possibly could be fighting Inoue next, and that's MJ. Walk us through sparring something like that. Obviously, that's a great guy to bring in. There's not too many guys in your weight class that would be a better guy to get ready for Inoue than a guy like him. How are those rounds been like?
Well, it's funny, bro, because that picture,
Hmm.
it was fake. We
Oh,
didn't
really?
spar. Yeah.
Okay,
But we wanted to cause some type of like we wanted to get people talking about like, hey, like they're over here
gotcha.
sparring for in a way. But yeah, no man.
Okay,
We never sparred because he's a lefty. So I wouldn't really,
makes sense. Yeah, that's true.
need him. But yeah, it was just mainly to to cause some commotion.
All right, so some of the boxing stuff to get stuff promoted for possible future things. Then,
Hmm.
okay, gotcha. That makes sense then. Well, the other part I gotta get into is, I mean, the elephant in the room. Obviously, we know Inoue. We know you're going to be the underdog heading into this fight, and that's something that's obviously everyone takes that differently. Some people rise to the occasion. You've kind of hinted at a few times throughout this interview. Sometimes it can get tough for guys because, I mean, at the end of the day, you've never fought a bigger fight. T-Mobile Arena is an
Hmm.
incredible atmosphere. That place is going to be
Hmm.
crazy. You're fighting one, if not the best fighter ranked in the world right now. Does that kind of settle? Like, how does that mentally settle in for yourself? How do you kind of feel when you think about that? Does that ever get pressure to yourself, or how do you take that and when you just kind of look at the body of work and you know who you're going to be fighting?
No, man. I mean, I think for me, it's just, he's a human being like me.
Yeah,
He's another person like me. I'm not, he has two hands and 2 feet,
fair enough.
just like me. And I don't think about the moment. I just think about um like what I want to do in the ring, what I'm going to do in the ring. I think about the fight more than anything. And even
Hmm.
when I'm in like walking towards the ring, man, I don't look to the sides. I don't look at who's there. I just look straight to the ring, and that's my
Hmm.
focus.
When you are going to walk through that ring, and like I said, you're going to be walking T-Mobile Arena. I know that atmosphere is going to be crazy. What do you think is going to go through your mind? Do you think you're going to be able to stay so focused and locked in on it in a way, and your opponent they're going to be fighting that night?
Yeah, I've been doing this for some time now,
Hmm.
where I've already kind of gotten used to that, man. I've had 132 like competition fights.
Yeah.
That's amateur and pro.
Yep.
So I'm kind of used to being able to kind of block out everything else. So I mean, I'll be able to. I think I'll be able to locked in.
Okay, absolutely, man. So I got to ask you then. I'm sure you've had a game plan. I'm not going to ask about all that. Obviously, this can be between you and your team. But when you talk about possible predictions, do you have a prediction set for what you think is going to happen in this fight yet?
My prediction, man, and this is just one of those things I was telling my buddy earlier when we were run. I just know it's gonna be a tough fight. I
Yeah.
know it's gonna be a tough fight, man. It's gonna be a fight that we're gonna be bloody and bruised and all that stuff. But and I welcome that because
Okay.
these are I was again going back to what I was telling my friend. He's like, man, I dream about getting to these moments to where you're all bloody and bruised, and I'm there now. So,
Hmm.
and I used to be the same. I remember when I was a kid, I used to tell my friends, hey, like if we ever have to fight, it has to be for this and money and this and that. And now that I'm there with, like, say now one of my teammates where we have the potential of fighting, now it's like, okay, like the money has to be good, and then we'll give up people a badass fight. And so now
Okay.
with this fight, it's the same thing where I'm 100% fully prepared to know. I mean, I'm 100% fully prepared for this fight to be the toughest fight of my career,
Yeah.
and I'm ready and I'm willing.
If you were to come away undisputed champion of the world on May 4th, what would you want to do at that point? Is there something, a rematch clause that you want to refight in a way again? Is there something that you'd have other guys set on? If you talk about MJ, possibly that could be a fight down the future. What would you want to do if that is a position you get placed in?
No, I mean, we signed there has to be a rematch.
Yeah.
Um, I think what I would like to do was possibly, let's say, fight him again, and then move up to 26. That would
Okay.
be relatively my plan, would just to be moved to 26.
So do you feel like your 122 is not going to be a long term weight class, and you already plan on 126 being something in your future, whether it be at next year, in the future, at least at some point?
Uh, it's it's because the way I see it is, what does us do?
Fair enough. Yeah, makes sense.
In a sense of like, if you want undisputed at 22, what else is there to do in your weight class? You already
Okay.
want undisputed. You're already the best individual. You want all the belts.
Yeah. Good
So
point.
for me now it would be, okay, well, let's go up to the next division and try to win the belts there, or try to win something there.
So it wouldn't be a weight related thing. It'd be more so just kind of challenging yourself, going to the next level.
Hmm.
Then. Okay.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Absolutely, man. Well, a couple more things before I let you go. One of those is that when you look about your outline, obviously I don't want you looking too past this fight or whatever it is, but like if you were to say, okay, 12 months from now, if we were to talk again, what do you want to accomplish? Like, what do you want your resume to look like? What do you want the next year, 12, 18 months to look like for yourself?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think obviously, beating Inoue,
Yeah.
and then going to Japan and beating him again, and then maybe go up to 26 and win a title there. Probably like hopefully a two division world champion by then, and then see where we go from there, man. That's kind of one of those things where um it's kind of hard to say
Yeah. It all depends
because
on what happens on May 4th. Yeah.
exactly right. And then
Yeah.
even at that, there's days where I'm just like, oh, I don't feel like getting up. I don't feel like training. I don't feel like doing none of this stuff.
Hmm.
So those are days where I'm just like, I may want to retire, right? You know what I mean? So
Sure.
in
You
18
never know.
months,
Yeah.
man, yeah, you never know. But for me, it would be the best thing would be just to win this fight, win in September, and then you go up to 26, win another title, and then from there, who knows?
Fair enough, man. Well, I got two final questions for you, man. One of which is supposed to be asked in the beginning of this interview, but we know you have a signature hairstyle there. I gotta ask
Mhm.
the origin behind this. How did this hairstyle come to be? What? Well, just give us the whole origin story behind this.
So it's funny, man, because I started watching. I'll tell you the real story of how it happened. Okay,
Okay.
have you seen Game of Thrones?
I haven't watched it clearly, but I know what it is. Yeah.
Okay, so when I was a kid, I was younger. My brother was watching Game of Thrones,
Hmm.
and he was watching a certain episode. I won't say the episode just in case you want to watch it.
All right.
And he was watching Game of Thrones, and I remember just messing with him. I was like, "Bro, that show's for dorks and this and that." And my brother's like, "Dude," he's like, "Dude, don't watch it with me because this is a good episode, and Monday you might want to watch it." Sure enough, one day came, and I ended up watching it and stuff. And then I was like, "Man, like I want to do something different. I wanna stand out. I want something to stand out about myself." And I was like, "You know what? This was March 23rd, 2019. I was like, you
Okay.
know what? I want to grow out a braid because one of the tribes in Game of Thrones, they're called the Dothraki, right? And when they win a battle, they put another braid in their hair.
Hmm.
So for me, it was like, okay, I'm gonna grow this out with the except with the thing of, if I ever lose, I gotta cut it off because when they lose the battle, like the Dothraki, when they lose a battle, they
Hmm.
have to cut their braid because it's like a shame.
Okay.
So for me, it was like, okay, I'm gonna grow this out and I'm gonna keep fighting. And if I lose, I cut it off.
Hmm.
Or when I win a world title, I'm gonna cut it off.
Okay.
So this fight, it comes off after this.
Oh, really? So we got kind of breaking news then. So this could be you only have about 2 or 3 weeks
Yeah.
left with it then.
2.5 weeks, brother. Yeah.
All right. So what's the story
After
behind wanting
six
to cut it
years.
off? So why do you want to cut off then after you win a world title then?
It was just one of those things where I completed the chapter of my
Okay.
life. You know what
Gotcha.
I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Well, I got one final question for you. I was like wrapping every interview up with this, and that's talking about your legacy. One day, retirement's gonna come. You're gonna step away from boxing. When that day does come, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want everybody to think of when they think of your name? What's that legacy you want?
I mean, I would love to be thought of a person that really never gave up. You know what I mean? In a sense of that no matter where, life took me, or really my career took me, I never gave up. I mean, again, my story is there, man. I'm not ashamed of my story because there's people who have it worse than me, brother. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Me having to work Lyft and DoorDash, and me and my girlfriend were doing all that stuff together. We were doing DoorDash together and stuff, and I'm not ashamed of that because it's one of those things where, like, hey, man, at least I wasn't doing other stuff to make some money. I was making money the proper way, and it was hard, but I did everything by the book. I try to be a good citizen of my
Yeah.
city and stuff like that. So for me, I think my legacy after boxing would be just what I would want to be remembered by. Really, is just um, somebody who never gave up, man. That tried to do the right thing at all times. And yeah, I'm not perfect, brother.
Yep.
I have my faults like every other human, man.
Exactly.
But I tried to be a good human being. I try to be a good person. So that's pretty much what I would like to be remembered, man. I don't want to be. If I'm somebody's idol or somebody's looks up to me like a kid, I want them just like me, man. Like I do giveaway. I do like Halloween events and toy drives and all that stuff because growing up for me, I never really had that. We didn't really have someone doing that.
Okay.
So now that I'm in the position where I can kind of do it and I have help, and I have help from the community to do that, I want to do that because I didn't have that.
Mm.
So if I can help one kid, two kids, or three kids, and they remember me for the rest of their lives, and they say, "Hey, I remember when you gave me toys or this or that," and I'm doing that now. I want I
Mhm.
want it to be like you, so I'm doing that. That would be like perfect for me, man. Because again, um, it's all about the next generation, man. I remember when I was a kid, they used to always tell us, "You're the future. You're the future."
Yep.
But now I'm not the future anymore. I'm the present. So if I
Mhm.
can do something good for the community and good something for the kids and stuff, so that way they can remember one person that tried to make a change, and then they in 20 years from now try to do the same change, and hopefully that one kid touches another kid, and that kid
Mhm.
wants to help out everybody. Like it's just a
Yeah, snowball.
nonstop
Yep.
cycle of willing to help everybody. So that's really what I want to be remembered, man. Somebody who try to help as much as they could.
Well, I love that, man. I have to admit that probably is the best answer I've ever heard for that question. So congratulations on that part.
Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Well, Ramon, I cannot wait to see what God's got in store for you next. Best of luck, man, and the rest of your training camp, and obviously on the big fight on May 4th.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate you for having me, man.
Of course, you're always welcome on, man. God bless.
You too.